put us all on the map.
Oh man, Pac-Man, that's my boy right there, man.
And he said, Naheem, did you ever think you would be on the same field as AP? And my answer was literally, hell no.
Nobody tell me what I ain't gonna be no more.
Hey, even to this day, OJ don't want no problem.
OJ, that's my dog though, man. For real. Respect.
Hello, everybody. It's Cody.
And it's Will Richardson.
And we're pleased to welcome you into another episode of the Sideline Story Podcast. Just a reminder that the Sideline Story Podcast is brought to you by the good folks at TGK Athletics. TGK Athletics is Maine's #1 training facility, specializing in youth sports, football, and basketball. Go on to tgkathletics.com for more info or download the TGK app. So what's happening, Will?
Nothing much, man. It's been a few weeks since we recorded and everything, but, it's same old. This whole COVID-19 going on and stuff. Actually, the NFL has another call tonight where it's an all-players call. I want to say at 6:30, just discussing some of the criteria that's supposed to be coming up due to the COVID and camp and stuff like that. So, but as far as me, still steady training, steady trying to be productive. Camp's supposed to start up on Tuesday, so I'm really looking forward to just getting back into the locker room with the guys and just seeing what kind of plans they put in place in order to ensure player safety,
Mm-hmm. Definitely, and I can say we've been doing some crazy traveling the past, we've been on the go for the past month, literally.
Yeah. So last month, we left to go to Charlotte about a month ago. Well, left to go to North Carolina about a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up training a week in Burlington, North Carolina at Golic Jr. Then going to Charlotte, training a week there. And then I decided to stay one more week in Carolina just so I can get an extra week down in Charlotte, North Carolina, training with Stafford Gatling and a lot of those guys. But it was definitely
Velocity Sports.
Yeah, at Velocity Sports. It was definitely amazing to get out there with a lot of other offensive linemen. That was one of the biggest things for me is just get the training with people within my position group because people don't understand just the difference that it is training with smaller guys and doing some of their workouts. I think when it comes to the NFL, your workouts start to become very position-based, and I feel like I got a lot of that work down there with Stafford and Charlotte.
Awesome. Well, without further ado, it's my pleasure –
and mine as well.
to introduce our next guest on the Sideline Story Podcast. This guy is somebody that you see on ESPN every single day. He's on Golic and Wingo. You can find him on the Levitard show at times. You can find him on Jalen and Jacoby, Mr. Mike Golic Jr.
What's going on, fellas? How we doing?
Doing great, Mike. Doing great, my man. It's such a pleasure to have you on, Mike. And just it's just great to just I'm kind of like starstruck in a way because I'm like, okay, we were just talking about. I'm used to hearing your dad. I'm like, man, now I got Mike Golic Jr. in front of me. It's crazy, bro. How you doing, my guy?
I'm doing good. I was just with Dad. I can confirm that. I always try and tell people every time because growing up, I always tell people I was like everybody else. I was a kid watching my dad on TV with everybody else and all this. The difference was I saw him at home. So when people would run up to him in public and were saying all this stuff, I was like, this guy falls asleep on the couch routinely at home when I'm talking to him when we throw yodels and stuff in his mouth, right? He's cool, but he's you don't gotta act any sort of type of way around Dad. He's a very, very normal man and he's a good hang for sure. But it's been pretty cool. So I appreciate you guys having me, man. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. For sure. So just talk to us a little bit about how COVID and talk to us a little bit about the COVID and how you've stayed productive during these hard times.
Yeah, it's been, I've been fortunate. I always tell people that our show kept going when COVID-19 hit. So many people were out of work and even a lot of my colleagues in sports, the people who cover live events, the people who call games, were sitting around with nothing to do because sports were on pause. And so we were fortunate. My dad, myself, and Trey Wingo, who do Golic and Wingo all together, were with each other in Bristol studios when COVID first hit. And then we had all been around each other once the pandemic started. And so we figured, all right, we'll just move the studio. They were going to have us all do it remotely. Trey lives near my parents. I live about 20 minutes from where I grew up. And so we just decided we'll do the show in my dad's basement together. We all knew and trusted that each other to kind of like what you guys are getting ready to do with ball, and trust that when you're away from the facility, we are going to do the right things and make sure that we put everyone's health and safety above all else. And so we got to do the show together still. And that's helped a ton, just having that routine. Because that was the biggest thing I found out was as long as I kept my day going, I had work where I was leaving the house to go do that. I got to see my parents in the process there, which was a big mental health lift in all of this. And then coming back home, I was like, all right, I got to make sure I'm still setting aside time to exercise, setting aside time to get ready for college football season, do the preparation I have to do to cover that. And having that in my day combined with all the Zoom calls that everyone's been doing and how different communication's been, it's actually felt busier in a lot of senses than it was before COVID-19 started to hit. So I've been super fortunate in that regard, because I know, idle, or what is it? An idle mind is a devil's playground. So it's one of those things where just avoiding that, I think, has helped a lot.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things that me and Cody try to do. He's been down here with me a lot in Florida, just training, from training, studying playbooks to yoga, to Pilates, to the podcast, That's one of the big ways that we kind of kept ourselves on schedule and kept ourselves productive. It's kind of like having a routine. It's like, how you said, you wake up every morning, you're usually going to work, you're going to the studio, you're coming back home, you're chilling with the kids, the wives. If you just kind of still try to stay around that same routine, it kind of like makes things a little bit easier as far as your day. But as soon as you get off of it, it's like, wow, where did these last 4 hours go? Or like, with me, my biggest thing is like, okay, I'll sit here and play the video game for 2 or 3 hours. I'm like, okay, well, I played the game for a little bit. Now it's time for me to do something productive, So that's kind of how I've been thinking about things, just to kind of stay on track and kind of keep a routine going.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Like, it's amazing you said that, because I've been doing that exact same thing with like watching or catching up on TV shows. Like, we all did the Tiger King thing at the beginning of quarantine and stuff like that. But it's like, all right, if I want to build that into my day, let's make sure there's a time for it. Because like you said, I would get off my schedule, and that's when I would notice, like, man, there's all this extra stress around. You're worried about making sure you're being safe going out in public, and you start to wear that a little bit once you get off that routine. And for me, it's even like the things that are fun like that. You say, all right, I got, a half hour, an hour for this, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. So I keep it going.
Yep, exactly.
What would you say has been like the biggest challenge for you, Mike?
The biggest challenge for me, I would probably say, is just like finding the motivation to like keep up an exercise routine and keep my diet in the place I want to be in all this. Like, it makes you super aware of it. And you can do right and you can do one thing well for a long time. And then after a while, one or two things knocks you off. There's a change in your schedule. Maybe you travel or go somewhere. And so it's kind of having that mental fortitude to lock back in on something like that and not let it get too far away. You have the balance enough to say, all right, I'm going to eat well, 80, 90% of the time in all this, so that when I stray a little bit, want to have fun or want to knock back a few beers or do something like that, I can do it. I can weather that. And then I know, all right, I'm going to get back and kind of course correct on this thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
I'm the same way, because I'm like I'm real cognizant of what I put in my body. So I'm like the same way. 90% of the time I'm eating super clean, I'm exercising, I'm working out. So I'll say when the gyms and things, shut down across the East Coast, like really across the United States, it was like a big challenge for me, because then it's like, okay, you can work out at home, but you guys know as well as I do, it's not the same intensity. It's not the same. Like, you have to find that motivation, and it's easy to get distracted and easy to say, well, I don't really feel like doing it today.
Yeah, or pushing it back I got it's only 1 o'clock right now. I got until 7 o'clock. I can knock it out. I can do it at 4.
That's the one where you really miss the team aspect too. And what I found that worked really well was, even if it wasn't friends that I had around here, just having people to keep me accountable. If I had someone, I was doing Zoom yoga classes, and I had a friend who lived across the country, but we would coordinate, we'd say, all right, we're going to do this class. And so I couldn't push it off because I had made that commitment to somebody else through all of that. Because right when this started, I got so lucky. For whatever reason, I was starting to get the itch. My brother and his wife actually owned 2 of those like Orange Theory Fitnesses, those workout studios. And they were starting to get the word that they were going to, probably have to close down soon. And so I went to Dick's and I just bought like 4 sets of dumbbells to have in my house, because I figured everything was going down. And just tried to, like you said, like piece it together at home and do whatever you can, knowing it's not going to be perfect. But, at this point, especially now, you do 30 minutes of anything, it's better than sitting around and doing nothing.
Of course.
Nothing. Exactly. Like, I tell myself, like, sometimes I go here and work out, and what I'll do is I won't even do cardio right after my workout, Mike. What I'll do is I'll say, okay, I done worked out. I'm going to kick it for a couple hours, but later on tonight, I'm going to go ahead and go do cardio, because what that does for me is it puts something else on my schedule. It kind of sets me up. It kind of puts me in the schedule, because when we get in that stadium, we don't sit there and practice and then go straight in the lift and then go straight into meetings. We'll practice. We'll have a little 2-hour break. Then we have meetings. Then we might have another little 30-minute break. Then we do this. So I'm trying to get myself accustomed to stop doing something, put my mind somewhere else, and then have the mind discipline to come back to my job. You know what I'm saying? So that's the big thing, what it is. And I feel like being a player in the NFL, and I'm pretty sure understand this too, you have to be able to lock in when you come into that building. And when you step into that building, it has to be football. It has to be a job mindset. Whereas, with other jobs, you come into the building, you might have to worry about other things. But I know when you step into that locker room, it's all about football, So I've been trying to get myself used to adjusting and turning it on and off,
Well, it's like you said before, like even relative to, working out as an offensive lineman versus training like a defensive back, like working out and training to be a football player and an NFL football player requires you to understand, all right, this is what my schedule is going to ask me. Like when you were getting ready for two-a-days, a lot of times the easiest way to do that was by breaking your workout up into twice a day, doing something like that, getting yourself into that rhythm. So it makes perfect sense.
Yep, definitely does.
So Mike, let's talk a little bit about, you touched on it earlier. Let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. Talk about, what it was like having your dad, be the face of ESPN. Talk about some of the challenges, like what was super cool about it, some of your experiences growing up.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I always tell people, like, I didn't know any better. I was super young when my dad was still playing football. He played for 9 years in the NFL, and then I was so young, I don't really remember a lot of that. All I remember growing up was my dad was on TV, and that wasn't a thing that, like, was a foreign concept to me. I didn't know any different, and so it always felt very normal. I would wake up in the morning, and I'd be eating breakfast, getting ready for school, and I would look up, and my dad would be on TV, and my mom would take us to school, and then I'd see him when we get home, or I'd see him at practice, and so that part of it normalized pretty quick. But as I started getting older and the show started getting bigger, and then I started playing sports and getting to high school, you start to realize is, all right, there's a few more eyes on you now. And it was almost good training for later on in life, going and playing college ball at a place like Notre Dame, where all of a sudden, just because you wear that gold helmet, you're treated a little bit differently, and everyone's watching the things that you do a little more. I got a taste of that at a pretty early age, wanting to make sure I don't put my dad in a bad spot by doing something dumb that he's got to talk about or answer to. And so that part of it was maybe the little bit of extra challenge. You get people with the nepotism cry, because I wanted to be my dad growing up, right? Like I was fortunate to have my heroes in my house were my mom and dad, and I wanted to be them. And so I said, all right, what are the things that help make them them? My dad went and played football at Notre Dame. That's where he met my mom. She went to St. Mary's there. And so I said, all right, well, that's the thing I want to do, because that's the person I want to be in all of this. And you'll get people that'll say, well, you're only going there because of your dad, and you do all that stuff. And it's the same nepotism stuff I heard when I got to ESPN. And so that was good training at an early age, that you got to know if what you want is really the thing that you want and you feel in your heart it's what you're supposed to be doing. It's a lot easier to weather all that, because it's like, well, I'm not just doing it because it's the easy thing to do. I'm doing it because this is what I want to do, and this is part of the plan that I've started to make on here. And so those were some of the challenges. The cool part was everything else. Like imagine going through life then, having a person who has been down the road you want to go on, whether it's as an athlete, as a broadcaster, and being able to constantly bounce information off of them. And to just look up and like see representation. Like we talk about all the time, like especially now, seeing representation for all different races, sexes, ages on TV, in sports, and in the media. Like I had an exact older copy of me doing all the things I could have ever wanted to do. Like that's a powerful thing for a kid, to make you feel like all your dreams are something that you can achieve and all that. That's why that's something I'm so cognizant of now, because who wouldn't want to give another generation that feeling with the people that they see in positions of power? And so having that as a resource, my dad at that young age, being able to pick his brain on all that stuff, and just having him and my mom support whenever we decided we wanted to do something, they put 110% of their weight behind us and made sure we were going to have every opportunity to do that. We were going to have all of the help that they could possibly muster up. And all of that stuff, makes all the difference in the world. And I don't think you even fully appreciate until all of a sudden you're a few years older, you're going through it in college and going out into the real world, and you go, man, not everybody gets this. And that's the sort of light goes on moment where you look back and maybe even have a deeper appreciation for the stuff they gave us.
For sure. And with you just talking about it, it just reminds me of Cody a little bit. What I've seen him growing up, his dad is all-time one of the best coaches in North Carolina, especially in Burlington, North Carolina history. And just seeing Cody grow up and just being around Cody a lot more from when he's younger to like now, I've seen how much his dad's just rubbed off of him. Just like not only just the way he acts, but just his knowledge of sports and his understanding of sports and football and how they work. I've seen kind of what you're explaining rub off with Cody a little bit. He's grown up around the sports world. Like everybody always asks Cody, like, Cody, you know you're gonna be a coach, right? Like